course, everyone can do it. And then I ask a male to come up and do the pose. And it looks ridiculous. Why does it look ridiculous? Because to be hot and male is not come get me. What is it? I'm going to get you. Okay? Now, this is where we have actually built into the gender system a potential for violence against women, which is why feminists say violence against women never exists outside the gender system. It is bang smack built into it. And this is crucial. And in fact, many of us go as far as to say that men who rape are not deviants. They are in fact over-conforming to the messages of society. So we should think about rape, not something out there, far away, but something that is threaded through seamlessly into the social construction of femininity and the social construction of masculinity. None of this is biological, okay? And again, those of us who've given birth to boys know our sons are not born rapists. We all understand that. That doesn't mean to say that we do not live in a culture that tells them over and over again that hypermasculinity is the way to be a man. Now, I want to talk about the world of growing up today. So when you're an adolescent, it is literally built into the DNA of an adolescent to conform to the culture. So when you get into the ages of 11, even younger, you wander through the culture and you think to yourself, what is this thing called masculinity or femininity? So let's take a young girl who as a cultural being is not going to listen to her mother or her teacher. She's going to go to pop culture, correct? The major form of education. And she's going to look around and she's going to know what constitutes femininity. So let's talk about the images that she's going to be met with, from Lindsay Lohan, to Britney Spears, to Kim Kardashian, to Paris Hilton. Now I want to just pause for a minute to talk about Paris Hilton and how she's often a punchline in a joke. Am I right? But think about this. She's a young woman. She's photographed in a sex tape by her boyfriend, who is 11 years her senior, and then against her will, he sells it to the porn industry, and for 2 years it is the best-selling porn film. Can you imagine what that felt like at that age? Now, when I was growing up, if that would have happened, you would never have heard from again, right? That would have been it. But in this new culture, which I call slut culture, of course, understanding there's no such thing as a slut, it's an invention to police women's behaviour, but let's just for the time being call it slut culture. So what she did is she said, and I think this was kind of a traumatic response, she said, you're going to call me a slut? Guess what? I'm going to be the best slut you've ever seen. And did she? She actually perfected it. Now let me say something. She can carry off the slut culture because her millions act as an upmarket cleansing cream. Put that slut label on a working class white girl or a girl of colour and they can't get away with it. And in fact what studies show is that girls who get marked as sluts in high school, it carries with them the rest of their life. We also know that these girls develop post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms quite similar to rape victims. Alcoholism, drug abuse, early sexuality, dropping out of school, all of those things. So in a way, being named a slut is a kind of collective rape of one's identity. But yet we live in a culture that tells girls either you're not like a slut, hypersex, or you're invisible. And no adolescent wants invisibility. In fact, it goes against the very nature of adolescence. So what are you going to do when your friends are walking around in the low-slung jeans, in the tattoo stamp at the back, in your high heels, short top? What are you going to do if you want to be visible? Because if you don't conform, you're going to be invisible. And this is a stage of adolescence where literally invisibility feels like death. So we have backed our girls into a corner. And a perfect example of this is Miley Cyrus. So think about this. She is a multi-billion-dollar commodity. As indeed Britney Spears. I'm not blaming these women, and you've got to understand these women exist within a huge nexus of a feeding chain of people making money off them. So let's take Miley Cyrus. She's 15 years old. She's about to age out of Squeaky Clean Hannah Montana. Did you all familiar with that here? Right. Now she has to be competitive in a world of hypersexualization. So what do they have to do? They have to rebrand Miley Cyrus. And in comes Ali Leibovitz with Vanity Fair. This was one of the pictures, 15-year-old. The next one. Is someone standing by the projector? I think it's probably here.
Yeah.
Okay, there. Okay. Now, that's her father, by the way. Would you like to sit like that with your father? I know I wouldn't. Okay. Now, what happened was very interesting. After this came out, of course, all the parents went crazy. My daughter's 12 years old. She loves Hannah Montana. How could you do that? And you know what her people did? They pushed her forward to apologise, as if 15-year-old Miley Cyrus had sat down and documented her trajectory from 15-year-old Miley Cyrus to this. She was fronted by all the adults who feed off her. Now they said, we're very sorry, this won't happen again. And then a year later, you can go back. This was in hell. Okay? This is 16-year-old Miley Cyrus. So can you see how the changes came on? And in fact, what's interesting is she's rebelling a little bit now. Okay? She's not actually quite fully conforming. At one point, she was incredibly hypersexualized. But I don't think she's actually doing what all the animals in the feeding chain wanted to do at this moment. But we'll see how that turns out. That story is yet to be told. And then we get to this, which is an example of the French Vogue, or the next one. So what you're doing here is you're hypersexualizing children. Now, I want to talk about the effects very briefly. About 5 years ago, I was involved in making a film called Price of Pleasure, which is about the effects of pornography. And at one point, we had to close down the filming because we were all aware that something had happened in the culture. And the term hypersexualization wasn't yet floating around. And we were thinking, what is going on? And then, a few months later, I went to interview rapists in Connecticut State prisons. And let me tell you, the person who gave me the best insight into this was not the PhD in media studies. It was actually an incarcerated child rapist I like to call Dick. Now, Dick, who had been through all of these types of rehab, etc., was trying to impress me with his language, as they often do. And he was telling me how he groomed his 10-year-old stepdaughter, and grooming is what perpetrators do to get their victims ready. So they shower them with love and affection and gifts, so that by the time they actually rape them, right, there is a connection and a bond, and these children are not going to go and tell. And then he looks at me, Dick, and he says to me, he stares me in the face, and he says, the culture is a lot of the grooming for me. And I literally almost fell off my chair, because I remember thinking, that's it. He's got it. We're living in a perpetrating culture. It used to be that you had individual perpetrators perpetrating against individual kids. Now we have a collective perpetrator called pop culture, and indeed the porn culture, perpetrating in a way more efficiently economic style against our entire generation of young girls, turning them into sex objects, turning them into hypersexualized objects before they have a chance to grow into their own authentic sexuality that belongs to them, that comes out of who they are, their experiences, their peer group. We are allowed, or should be allowed, to develop that according to us. But no, in comes a generic, formulaic media system that stamps on what sexuality is looking like, and of course, given adolescents, they're all willing to join it. Now, next slide. I want to talk about perp culture part 2, which is the porn industry. Because what I want to discuss is the fact that what we know about pornography pre-internet is not the same today. We are in now a completely different industry. So let's start with this. Often we think of Playboy as porn. Like, how many of you think of Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustle? Okay? Okay. So I'll give you an example. I went to Iceland to talk to the Minister of Education, the Minister of the Interior, and they were talking about their curriculum that they had written on pornography, and they were thinking about Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler. Okay? Those, and let me tell you, I never thought I would live to say this. Those were the good old days. Okay? So let's go into what's happened. Of course, technology technology is the key to what's happened. What the internet did is it made pornography affordable, anonymous, and accessible. The three key things that have driven demand. Now, many of us think that technology drove pornography. Actually, it's the other way around. Pornography drove technology. The pornographers had spent a fortune in R&D developing all sorts of technological improvements. And when I went in 2008 to the Adult Video News Expo, which is the biggest porn expo in Las Vegas every year, it is no accident that every year on floor 1 is the porn expo, and right above it is the electronics show of the year. Because the people go up and down because of the connections. Now, I want you to think about pornography as a business, not as a fantasy. Fantasy happens in the head. Businesses happen in the international banks of capital. Now, Edward and Edmund is actually a pornographer, and he said in Bradley, a lot of people get distracted from the business model by the sex. It, meaning the pornography industry, is just as sophisticated and multi-layered as any other marketplace. We operate just like any other Fortune 500 company. So this is where we are in a brand new world now, where what we're looking at is the porn industry is seamlessly woven into every other industry in global capitalism. That gives it economic, political, and cultural power like we have never seen before. So when I say who are the big guys in porn, does he come to mind? You kind of know? Or maybe him? Larry Flynn? Or even him? Richard Esmond, yes? Alright, I'm going to introduce you to the porn mogul of the world that I'm sure nobody has ever heard of. Fabian Weimann, a 30-odd-year-old German businessman who lives in Luxembourg, who runs an organization called Manwin, M-A-N-W-I-N. This is the Walmart of porn. This is the face of the porn industry. And what is interesting, and it is no accident that he is completely under the radar. So let me tell you, Manwin owns 8 of the 15 most popular and lucrative porn sites in the world. And very importantly, what we'll discuss in a few minutes, it owns most of the free porn sites. There is no such thing as a free porn site, they call it that, and I'm going to explain in a minute how free porn sites have actually basically revolutionized the entire industry. Now, Adult Video News, which is again another sort of trade journal, the corporatization of porn isn't something that will happen or is happening. It is something that has happened. It's Las Vegas all over again. The independent owners, renegade mobsters, and visionary entrepreneurs pushed aside by mega corporations. Manwin is the mega corporation. Gone are the small-time players. Gone are the days when anybody in Los Angeles could pick up a camera, make porn, upload it onto a porn site, and make money. When you hear about the porn industry going bankrupt, have you been hearing this in the papers, how they're losing money? The truth is the poorer, smaller ones are, because what you're getting is monopolization and corporatization. It's become what we call a mature business. So just to give you a sense of it, 36% of the internet is porn. Online porn industry makes over $3,000 a second. 40 million regular consumers of online porn in America. 1 in 4 search queries is about porn. More than a third of all downloads are pornography. Pornography has basically absolutely cannibalized the internet. So let's think about what this means. Now, when we say porn businesses, okay, let's think how this changes things. What porn businesses, like all businesses, raise capital, hire managers and accountants, organize trade shows, have lobbies, which I'm going to talk about later, called the Free Speech Coalition, and very importantly, they interface with banks, credit card companies, venture capitalists, cable operators, etc. Do you understand that every time a man or a woman, but mainly men, spend money on porn, that banks and credit card companies make money? Do you understand that banks across the world and credit card companies have a vested interest in the growth of the porn industry? This again has never happened before, that it has seamlessly woven its way into international capital. Now I want to give you an example. When I was at the porn show in 2008, I interviewed a guy who runs this thing called Real Dolls. Anyone know about Real Dolls? Kind of atomically whatever the hell that is, it's a doll. So I asked him a question. I said to him, why do you think men use these? And he looked me straight in the face, and he didn't even smile. And he said, I think it helps men develop relationships with women. So I tend to be generous for those relationships with women. Anyway, so I said to him, have you heard of Lars and the Real Girl, which is a film with Ryan Gosling? Anyone seen this? Where he falls in love with a real doll, one of these dolls, which, by the way, are about £4,000 with a 6-month wait list. So, yes, okay, so he said to me, this is in a porn show, he said to me, have I heard of Lars and the Real Girl? He said, we were the consultants. He said, and the day the movie came out, our website went down because so many men came on our website. So again, synergy between the porn industry and Hollywood. Okay. So what is mainstream pornography? Right. I'm going to tell you now what is in mainstream pornography. I do not deal with hardcore pornography in the sense of the really bad stuff. I deal only with the stuff that the 11-year-old does when he puts porn into Google. So first of all, nobody in pornography talks about softcore versus hardcore. That's gone. Softcore has migrated into pop culture. Basically, it's in the two major categories in pornography today are features and guns.